Living in times where there is an assault on sanity. Political correctness has run amok and logic has been left by the wayside. Do you constantly ask yourself, WTF is going on in this nation? Do you sometimes feel like a stranger in your own country? Well, fear not. You are not alone. This is the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Show, coming to you from deep inside flyover country with your hosts, V. Wright and Jose Estevez.
Welcome to WTF, and I am V. Wright.
And I am Jose Estevez. Welcome to the show, folks, where we come to you Monday through Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. live, unrehearsed, unfiltered, unscripted, and PG-13, but never PC. This is the Thursday edition of the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot radio show. Welcome.
Well, and I would like to let you guys know that if you would like to share our information with other folks to get them to listen into our show, if you think highly enough of us to do that, you fellow patriotic bitter clingers out there, then by all means, call us. Send them. Sorry about that, guys.
It sounds like somebody already is.
I mean, to tell you. Send them to our website, thewtfradioshow.com. You can send them to our host network, Patriot Network News at pnntalkradio.com. Send them to patriotsride.org, or you can send them to either iTunes, TuneIn.com, or Spreaker.com, all three of which have a mobile app that you can also download. You can catch us live, you can catch us on demand, or you can catch us on our on their mobile app at those locations. If for some reason you are unable to hear a show live, or if you would like to go back and listen to an old show, you can do so by going to Spreaker.com or YouTube, both of which archive our shows. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can do so by going to our Facebook page, the WTF the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Show on Facebook. Gosh, I'm lost tonight. And or at Twitter at the WTF Radio. Guys, if you'd like to call in and participate in our show, you can do so. Our phone lines are open during our live broadcast. You can do so by dialing 313-462-0068. Senor.
Well, welcome to the show, folks. Last live show of the week. We're excited to be here with you. We've got a great guest this evening. And, yeah, everything's looking wonderful in the world, isn't it? I actually had somebody come up to me today and tell me. Now, this, folks, I can't give away any identities or anything, can't divulge much information. But this person said to me, don't you wish Putin was our president? And I, never sure if people are messing with me or what. And I looked at the person, kind of quizzically, not really sure how to respond. And he jumped in and said, just because he acts like he actually cares about his country, and no matter what we think of what he's doing it in the best interest of his country. And I just looked at him and said, amen. Isn't that the truth? And this is from people that normally don't talk politics and pay attention to things like this, folks. And people are starting to realize and starting to recognize just how weak Obama has made us intentionally, totally intentionally. I love it when people say things like that to me. They're paying attention. They're catching on. And I exactly agree. I wish Putin was our president as well, based on the fact that he's doing what's in the best interest of his country, not going any further than that, saying I wish we were, under his rule or anything like that, because he's not the greatest person in the world. But do you think Barack Hussein Obama is? And Barack Hussein Obama is slamming us and weakening us wherever he goes. At least Putin and other people agree with how they do it. Their mind is in the right place. So, I don't know, just interesting when I run across people in little conversations we have during the course of a day. It actually is encouraging to me that people that typically I don't feel are involved in politics they're actually picking some things up and paying attention. So, I don't know, just something that happened to me today.
Well, it is nice. It is refreshing. God, I can't talk tonight. This is horrible. It's always refreshing when we see new people becoming involved, awakening. We need masses of the populations to do that. However, I just am not seeing the masses. You would think that this far into this game, that our numbers would have grown substantially.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And maybe that is the purpose in the invasion, in allowing the invasion, is because they actually are, and we're just not seeing it. But I'm just not seeing it.
Well, and there was something I wanted to mention last night, and this is not what we were just talking about, but this is something that just popped into my mind again. We had a guest on a couple weeks ago. Very knowledgeable man, Rick Pear, and Rick was talking about the fact that what would happen if we lose satellites, and what would that mean for GPS. Now, folks, think about GPS. We're not talking about just your cell phone and that you can't drive to the 7-Eleven or wherever the heck it is you're going. We're talking about what it would mean to the military. Our military, if we had to react to something, and if somebody was able to take out satellites and take out enough that would mess up the GPS system. So I was thinking about last night on WTF Wednesday, didn't have a chance to mention the story, but that the Navy, and I didn't realize this, for years and years now, the Navy has been basically relying on technology, and they've been relying on the GPS system, and they said now they're actually instituting courses again, teaching the sailors and the folks in the Navy how to use sextants and how to navigate by the stars and stuff like that. I would have thought, to be honest with you folks, that the military would be doing that, because once again, Rick, who was on the show with us, was talking about from land-based forces, Army in particular, that type of thing, that they have to learn how to navigate, navigate the terrain by maps and stuff like that, and topographical maps, I think that's how you say it, and not relying on technology and GPS. And here's an interesting story that just came out today. China is pursuing a broad and robust array of counter space capabilities to take out satellites, anything in the in the atmosphere, basically, and of course primarily satellites. But they are going to be using a bunch of different things here. They're going to use a combination of kinetic, electronic, and cyber attacks against satellites and ground support structures, and China is deep into this. They're going to be using explosive charges, fragmentation devices, kinetic energy weapons, lasers, radio frequency weapons, jammers, and robotic arms, including, supposedly, according to this government report, having satellites that will be able to crash into another satellite to render it useless, other satellites that'll be able to go and, I guess, basically pick them up. I don't know if that's to throw them out of orbit or mess with them so they can't do what their mission is, what they're up there programmed to do. I'm telling you, folks, I think we're relying too much on technology, and I assumed that the military would not be that way. That they would realize that they need to have some redundant systems, and those would be falling back on the old technology, which is no technology, reading maps, navigating by the stars, that sort of thing. And apparently they're getting to that, but I hope it's just not too late. I also didn't realize the military didn't use Morse code anymore. I guess it's all technology now. So. Just some interesting things that have come to my mind in the last couple days, and Obama has weakened us, but I don't think that means that we have to remain that way. And hopefully, we've got people in there that will do their best to make sure that those aren't, that our vulnerabilities can't be exploited.
You know what? I'm sorry. I am going on full-on mode right now.
Uh-oh.
I am so sick and tired. I've had this battle all day long. I'm so sick and tired of the Hopi thing. The entire Hopi thing. We're going to hope that our military... Are you not aware of the fact that this regime has annihilated our military leadership, annihilated the budget, and yet we're going to have hope? We're going to have hope in individuals that are representatives of this nation when they have shown no desire whatsoever to expose anything, any of the knowledges that they know that show the treasonous acts of this regime. We are going to rely and have hope in our new Army commander who is gay with no Army experience. I'm so sick of the hope thing. I got into a debate today with a very, very dear friend of mine, and I had to end the conversation with, I love you very much, but you need to understand I'm standing my ground till eternity with this. Because He thinks Trey Gowdy's a nice guy. Trey Gowdy needs to give Daryl Isar is a nice guy. He needs to be given a shot. And I said, what are you seeing that is indicative of the fact that these people are willing to stand up for you? Because I can give you example after example after example of where Trey Gowdy specifically has walked out on a vote so that it is not a registered cast against him. And he says, well, he's doing the Benghazi committee. I said, yes, and what has been accomplished there? Well, right. You know that they're bringing Hillary. He's got, from last I heard, Hillary Clinton's going to testify before his committee on October 22nd. I said, really? And what is it that you expect is going to occur with this? Well, it seems that the expectation is that they're going to get to the bottom of something. Let me tell you people something. They're getting nothing to the bottom of absolutely zero, zilch, nothing. You want to know why? There's a FBI investigation. Trey Gowdy is a prosecuting attorney. I guess he does not know about self-incrimination. She has an ongoing FBI criminal investigation. She's going to get up there and expose herself to a committee? Seriously? And you guys have hope that there's something's going to come? I have hope too. I have hope. I wake up with it every morning. I hope that I see Marines march into the White House and put Barack Obama in handcuffs. But guess what? That gets shattered every morning by 8 o'clock.
Hope in one hand and wish in the other. Or wait, no, you know what it is. Spit in the other. There we go.
So you're sitting here saying, oh, I hope. I am so sick and tired of hearing that word because I have given up hope. And for you guys out there who are unfamiliar with what we have going on tonight we have former FBI agent in counterterrorism, John Guandolo, joining us this evening, and we're looking forward to his visit. But I'm going to preempt his visit with, I received pictures not even 30 minutes ago of the bus transports into Houston of the new Arab refugees. And
John will be able to talk a lot more about that because that's his... that's what he did. He was, into the big time into the Muslims.
That was into Houston. So, Houston, you have a problem.
Oh, Texas has a problem. I'm telling you what right now. Texas has a problem. They can sit there and be as content as they want and be as braggadocious as they want, but I'll tell you what, they're going to turn them blue, and they're going to do it quicker than you think as well.
Turn them blue,
they're going
seriously?
for the major cities, folks.
Turn them blue for what? Turn them blue for what? Oh, that's that hope in that next election. I swear I'm going to lose my crap over this hope thing.
There you go.
I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose it tonight. If the illusion of that hope-y thing happens, I'm going to lose it. I'm just telling you. You want some more pepper on your, or some habanero pepper on your mix tonight, folks? Yesterday, our dear friend, Gabby Gifford, joined forces with former New Jersey Governor Christine Todd Whitman and former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright to launch a new women-based coalition for gun control. Gifford is calling the group the Women's Coalition for Common Sense.
Oh, of course.
Which is sincerely lacking in this whole scenario.
Right.
And it is the second gun control group she's launched. The first gun control group she founded is called Americans for Responsible Solutions, which she is able to conclude none of. Gifford's launch of the new group went on record when she said, "We can change our laws, we can fight for responsible solutions. Together we can make women and their families safer. We don't have to agree about everything, but we can agree on this. Yeah, God forbid we agree on murdering and assassinating babies on a daily basis." And she goes on to say, dangerous people with guns are a threat to women. You know what? So is Planned Parenthood, and you ain't doing anything about that.
Hey, snap.
Okay. Well, it's been reported that Gifford's new group was holding a domestic violence awareness summit yesterday, and it was expected to draw more than 100 women. The coalition is pushing to redefine domestic violence. Currently, in most states, that does not cover individuals who are not married. So, by including them, you've got to think about the new laws in domestic violence, folks. What is it? Oh, yeah, that's right. If you have ever been convicted of the misdemeanor of domestic violence, you've lost your right to gun ownership. So, by all means, let's expand that. And let us also remember that under the Nicole's law, the Nicole Brown Simpson law, you don't have to strike another individual. Domestic violence is any time someone is called where there is a disturbance in the household between two individuals. Mm-hmm. So anybody that is convicted of arguing with their husband, their wife, or their children can now be classified. That's what they're moving for. So that they can classify them as incapable and too irresponsible and too dangerous to own a weapon. Not like they couldn't own, a machete.
All right. Here's a message from a woman. Women carrying a gun is a, in capital letters, responsible solution.
Amen. Amen
right
to that.
In one short sentence.
Well, if I couldn't carry a gun, let's see, what else could I carry?
A cop?
I don't know. I've got a pistol grip crossbow.
Oh, I see. You're gonna go out Daryl Dixon on him, huh?
I mean, hey, if you think I won't put razor rings on that bad boy, you're out of your mind, and that'll blow a quarter-size hole through and through.
Oh boy.
So
I think we should all just carry cops around. I mean, that's a sensible solution, right? And that way we get to hire more government employees. So bonus, win-win. There we go.
It's just ridiculous to what extents that they will go. And I'm just going to tell you, if that was the situation, then that's what I would do. Is I would carry my pistol grip crossbow. Mm-hmm. We have a caller. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
My name is Melissa, and I'm calling from, I'm just going to say North Carolina.
This is Keegan's mom.
Yes, it
is. For you listeners out there who don't know, Melissa is Keegan's mom, and Keegan is a 12-year-old who listens to our show regularly, and we just love him to death. He is like the mascot and representation of all to come that has brains. So we just love him.
That would be Keegan.
What's on your mind tonight, Melissa?
Well, as a woman who has been the victim of domestic violence, my marriage for 9 years, my ex-husband, who has lost his parental rights because he did put his hands on Keegan when Keegan was sick. He choked him and picked him up physically off the bed by his neck.
Wow.
And he did not spend one night in jail. Wow. He was charged with domestic violence, but the judge said, and it was a male judge, he did say, and he's actually lost his position due to a lot of his comments, but he said during the court hearing that apparently I was too attractive, and my ex-husband could not keep his hands off of me.
Say what?
He still
a judge on the bench said that.
He did, and he ruled that my ex-husband was not. He didn't have to go to jail. He didn't. He was not charged even with a misdemeanor. He didn't get charged with felony. So it's very, very hard for a man or a woman that is, beating their spouse or, their girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever, to actually be charged with a misdemeanor and lose their rights to a gun. So it's not like he still had a weapon. He carried a weapon with him all the time, illegally, but he still did, because he was on probation for a year.
Wow.
So if they expand it, it should cover everybody. And I don't have a problem with that. Personally, I carry, and
I guess you
carry extra. And my boys are trained by, they've taken classes with the sheriff, and they know how to use it. And, we've gone through all the safety things. But my ex-husband, who was extremely violent and had the police called on him multiple times, was arrested, spent one night in jail, and that was only because he violated the restraining order. When he violated that, 2 men had to pull him off of me in front of my children outside of the house that we had just moved into.
Wow.
And he still has not been charged with anything other than,
But see,
but
that's
he was never brought to.
But that's not a domestic.
Even though he was charged, he didn't get anything. Nothing happened to him, is what I'm basically saying.
Right.
Well, I understand that that's a domestic violence issue, but that is so much more. I'm sitting here and my heart is breaking for you.
It's over now
because you had to endure
his
this.
His rights are terminated.
However,
he is totally out of the picture. We have moved almost 200 miles away from where he is. He has no idea where we are. And like I said, I carry, so if he finds out, oh well.
Well, exactly. But yours is not, it's probably running 50-50 between situations like yours and situations where a husband and wife get into an argument. She slaps him. He grabs his hands. Somebody's going to jail and getting charged with domestic violence.
They both go to jail. In North Carolina, they'll both go to jail. They're both arrested, and they'll both be taken in, and the kids will go with CPS.
Exactly. And in that situation,
if a family member can't take them.
And in that situation, do you think that someone should lose their rights to a weapon if they are restraining someone to stop them from slapping, or because somebody slapped somebody? Because if that's the case, I need to give up all mine.
Convicted are two different things.
That's true.
Most people, like I said, for 9 years, I dealt with that, and that was
I agree.
My stupidity and my fear. But
in your situation, he
should have been convicted.
In your situation, he should have not only been charged with domestic violence, but he should have been charged with so much more: child abuse, child endangerment. There is, assault and battery. There were so many other charges that he could have been done with. And like I said, in most domestic violence cases, it is a split about 50-50 between situations like yours and situations like the one I've described. Because I do have a girlfriend that slapped the fool out of her husband because he said something about messing around with somebody else. His response was to grab her arms, and because she had marks on her arms where he was stopping her from hitting him, and because she slapped him, they did both go to jail, and they both were charged with domestic violence, and they both were found guilty, and they both had to go to counseling. And neither one of them would typically respond in that manner in any way, shape, or form.
Who called the police?
A neighbor.
Neighbor.
Mm-hmm. Neighbor. Well, like I said, in this state you are, but usually in this state you might be charged, but you're not going to get convicted.
Right.
And he should have been charged with felony.
I agree.
Child abuse and endangerment. But he wasn't even charged with that. It was bumped down to a misdemeanor. And then he wasn't even convicted. And
Well,
I had, pictures from the doctor, the police station, because, they take you to the police station. And, it's pretty rough. You're violated again. When they take you to the police station, they put you in a room with 2 police officers, and you have to remove your clothes, and they take pictures of where the bruises are. Because my ex-husband his little thing was, as long as I don't hit you in the face, it's not abuse.
Oh.
Well, I'm sorry that you had a piece of garbage, and I'm sorry that there was a complete and total miscarriage of justice. Well, it was a total and complete miscarriage of justice. Justice failed you. Absolutely, justice failed you. Right. But there are situations where people anymore with the liberal laws and the propensity to avert any potential harm to another individual, that people's rights are being removed.
I agree. And it should not be a blanket policy for everybody.
I agree.
You have to look at the situation at hand.
It is a case-by-case basis.
It should be case-by-case. It should not be, some type of blanket situation. It can't be where, okay, this is what this person did, so this is what happens. They automatically lose all their rights. It can't be that way.
Absolutely. Well, Melissa, we appreciate you calling in and telling us your story, darling, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. That's kind of a very personal experience that you did not have to share with us and our listening audience, but we are appreciative that you do. This is the biggest problem with the judiciary, is that when they ignore an intense situation, a situation that does need the attention, and yet when there is a situation that truly should be a situation of, you guys just stay away from each other. Mm-hmm. You are like oil and water, and you're not going to mix. Y'all just stay away. Both of you are good people as long as you're separate. And it is very unfortunate. It is very unfortunate that there was such a miscarriage of justice. That is a problem with the judiciary there, and that is something that I would be dealing with if I lived in your area.
Well, I don't agree with Gabby Gifford, and I don't agree with what she is trying to do by any means. And I do agree with the fact that, carrying a gun as a woman is what makes me responsible.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Because I protect myself. I have 2 kids, and that's where my priorities lie.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Again, I refer back to, if I was unable to be armed with a gun, I would be armed with my pistol grip crossbow, and it would have razor rings on it, so it would be just as effective. I'm just saying. I'm not going to be anybody's victim. I'm just not.
No. Not ever again.
Melissa, it was good talking to you.
Yes,
Tell Keegan, send Keegan our love.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, darling.
You too.
Bye.
You too.
Hey, V, real quick, just want to let you know that one of our chatters said victims with guns live longer. Boy, that's true. And also some love for you from Washington State. Listener out there says, love the crossbow, V. And I said I would mention that to you. So.
Well, I appreciate it. For those of you out there who are unfamiliar, yes, I do believe in weapons. I believe in weapons of all sorts, and I believe you should be skilled in as many as you can. I'm just saying, let's not forget that I've already told you the new the new arrivals have begun as of today in Houston. Jihad Houston, yay!
Yeah, Jihad Houston.
Oh Lord, and we're going to talk about that and so much more. And I believe that we may have our guest on the line. Do we have John with us? Maybe not. Do we have a caller on the line?
We have a caller.
You like Adam.
810.
Adam.
Is this John?
Adam.
Hi, Adam.
Adam,
where are you calling from, and what's on your mind?
Shelby Township. Obamacare.
Okay.
Obamacare. And one of the things that have taken place since Obamacare has happened and the increased insurance costs for a lot of our employees. We have a company that has a little over 300 employees, and we had very good insurance for employees. The cost of a family originally was about $40 a week. Once Obamacare took place, that cost rose to about $170 a week for a family. A lot of employees are upset not being out of those costs and the ability to have insurance now because they can't afford it because they have to pay their bills. So my point is that Obamacare is not good for the country. This country is not, socialism is not good. You know, you have to work for what you have, but too many people now work to pay for people that don't want to work, and that's my issue.
Well, you're absolutely correct. We have been talking about Obamacare since our inception. We have had Stephen Tucker, who is one of the national experts on the implementation of Obamacare, on our show on a few occasions. Yes. He is a very good friend of the show. But since you brought that up, it's funny because today a friend of mine sent me a copy of a letter that he received from the IRS, the Department of the Treasury. And it says, you have an unpaid shared responsibility payment for 2014, amount due $2,344. It says, our records show you have an unpaid shared responsibility payment for the tax year ending December 31st, 2014. The law allows us to assess this payment against you for not securing minimum essential health insurance for you and your dependents, if applicable. As a result, your balance of $2,344, the balance shown, is due immediately. Now, in the letter, as an addendum to that, it says, thanks, Obama, for the fine for not having insurance, because the plan I had that was $398 a month for my family only increased to $1,400 a month in 2014. So I chose not to pay $1,400 a month, so got a nice little fine. Thanks for the Affordable Care Act. Thanks for making it so affordable. That's a fact, guys. I'm sitting here looking at his address on this. I mean, there was nothing
hid.
United
States right now.
Absolutely.
And I guess that's the problem. I mean, you know, we all had affordable care for those people that worked, and the issue is that everybody who works has to pay for everybody who doesn't work, and all these illegals. And, you know, I'm all for America, you know, and bringing people in, you know, to have a better way of life. But you have to carry your weight. And, you know, when this Affordable Care Act came into place, and we found out that there were huge penalties for businesses that didn't offer their employees insurance, right?
Right.
You know, and the employees, once we gave them insurance, and they looked at their checks and they found out how much they were taking out, and they couldn't afford to pay to live in their places, or to pay their car payments, or to just pay for the benefits, you know, for their children, because of how much it was. That's very disturbing. You know, it shouldn't be that way.
Well, you made an interesting comment in that everybody should carry their weight, and you're absolutely correct that is the way it should be. However, in the United States of America, as it stands as of today, 40% are carrying the weight of the other 60%, and we are adding to that 60% on a daily basis. Again, welcome Jihad Houston. We appreciate you calling in, Adam. Unfortunately, we're out of time because our guest has arrived. we do ask you to call in again. We're here Monday through Thursday live from 6 to 8 p.m., and you have the number. Call in anytime.
I will, absolutely. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. You have a great evening.
Thanks, Jose.
You're welcome. Take care.
Bye.
And we do, I believe, have our guest John with us now. John, are you with us?
I am. Thanks for having me.
Well, guys, I'm going to do a little introduction here of John Guandolo. He is a former FBI agent with counterterrorism. He is a counterterrorism expert. He created and implemented the FBI's first counterterrorism training education program. He was assigned to the counterterrorism division in Washington, D.C. He is the author of Raising a Jihadi Generation, which you can locate at www.understandingthethreat.com, or you can find it on amazon.com. He is the co-author of Sharia, The Threat to America. And he is the executive director of operations for ORW, which stands for Operation Restored Warrior. John, we welcome you, and did we miss anything?
No, you did plenty there. That's more than I needed.
Well, it is our pleasure that you have decided to join us tonight. One of the topics that we started out our show with was the pictures that I got about 30 minutes prior to airtime tonight, which came directly out of Houston. As a matter of fact, let me look at this real quick, and I will give you details. These pictures came to me from Houston, Texas, at Barker Cypress and West Little York Roads. And there are no less than 3 buses, I do believe, of Arabs going into Houston to the tent city at Masjid al-Mustafa Mosque.
Wow.
And that came to me 30 minutes prior to air. What say you tonight, John?
Well, I'm not familiar with what's going on this moment in Houston, but I can certainly say that, and we don't know whether they're having some kind of big event there or not. What I can say is that in Houston, as in most major American cities, the majority of the Islamic centers and mosques are hostile to the United States. And what we've found, and what I've found in my work, is that the ones that aren't hostile don't have much influence in the community, so it's not necessarily as relevant as it sounds. So I think that's kind of a starting point for our discussion tonight.
Well, by all means, take the lead. John, you're not familiar with our format. It is very casual. It's mostly commentary. Right. We will interject with questions, but basically, we're going to give you the floor. Our listeners are looking to be educated.
Well, before we go into that, though, having said that, can I jump in here real quick, John and V? And John, by the way, I'm Jose. Welcome to the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Show. We're glad to have you. I was looking... Before you came on this show, I was looking up some stuff, trying to get a little background on you. And there's an article going back to 2009 talking about you. And they're here's what they're saying, but they're saying it in a negative way. But I want our folks to understand this, how long you've been preaching the gospel here. This is from 2009. So this is right after Obama has been elected, become president of the United States. Now, a lot of us knew that this was a bad thing. We didn't realize at that point just how bad it would get by the year 2015. But listen to this. According to the Shelbyville, Tennessee Times-Gazette, they quoted you as saying every major Muslim organization is controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood, according to you, and you said that was formed to overthrow America and establish Islamic law. And they quoted you as saying they're having great success of implementing Sharia law. I could give you 1,000 examples. Now, like I said, this article from 2009 is portraying you in a negative light, but my God, man, you were nailing it before most of us had even been thinking about that, much less thinking about is Obama Muslim or isn't he, but he's certainly furthering their cause. This is going back to 2009, and I'm assuming you were doing it before that as well. So welcome to the show.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you. Yeah, they've been throwing mud at me. Really, it started in 2006.
Okay.
When there were a couple instances, and I won't, walk through the entire history, but this probably will help your audience. In 2006, in August of 06, I created a training program in the FBI, which was the first in the government. It wasn't, obviously, in 2006, the first counterterrorism training, but what it was the first counterterrorism training that specifically looked at the Muslim Brotherhood, their network here, their leaders, their organizations, Sharia, what is it? Why do we need to know it? And there were 50 people in that course from FBI, local and state law enforcement, CIA, NSA, DIA. We had assistant U.S. attorney, DOJ analysts in there. You name it, there were just a ton. And I still have all the records of that course. And they all said at that point, 9 years ago, everyone in the government needs to know this. And right after that, I had a little encounter with some of the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood, and I called them out, and they went to FBI headquarters and complained about me. And instead of bringing the hammer down on them, the hammer came down on me, and I was told to shut up because I was offending them. And that was in 2006, and it actually started the friction started in 2005, but so it was right around then when, my work to just what I thought, I grew up in what I think was, I was taught that, the government is not a bad thing. The government can abuse its power, but this is a good country. It's the greatest country on the planet. That's what I grew up hearing from my father, and I went to the Naval Academy, and I swore an oath to the Constitution, and I became a Marine infantry officer and went to combat and swore an oath to the Constitution, and I became an FBI special agent, and I swore an oath to the Constitution, and I thought that means when you see bad guys doing bad things, when you're an FBI special agent, you pursue it, and you go after them with everything you got, and that's what I did, and the longer time went on, the more heat I was taking from my own organization for speaking the truth. Now, looking back 10 years or 9 years, if I had to do it again, I was in a very different place personally. And so for me, I took it very personal when, people weren't listening. Now I realize, I'm just a messenger. I'm going to speak the truth. I'm going to show, leaders, whether they're 4-star generals or directors of intelligence agencies, or they're a local cop. Doesn't matter. And quite frankly, right now, local police are the most important people that need to know this. And so that's what I've been doing. And what is shocking, I just got back on the red eye this morning from being out west, briefing state legislators and leaders in a particular state on this issue. And they were flabbergasted, because the thing that shocks people is this is so crystal clear. This is so easy to know. This is not, as the Shelbyville Times said, because even back then I had words with that reporter. It's not my opinion. When I brief this stuff, even on radio shows, like when I'm talking, I act as if everything I say I have to take into a court of law, because I have had to, because people have, the bad guys have taken civil actions against me, and people have tried to take criminal actions against me because they just want to shut me up. And I'm having none of it, because this is the truth. And I care about this country. I care about my family. And I think it's worth fighting for. And so people, say some nasty things about me. I don't care. They're not people whose opinion matter to me anyway. And they're the bad guys. And so we should be putting them in jail, or, doing to them what we do to the bad guys on the battlefield. But we shouldn't be, kowtowing to them. This is where we are. And I guess that if there's one thing that is important for your audience to know, is this information. And this is what's most mind-boggling, I believe, is, as I said, very clear. It's evidentiary. It's been entered into evidence in huge terrorism trials, and the longer you give me, the more evidence I can lay out about this. The question is, why aren't we doing what we should be doing about this, like shutting all these organizations down, putting their leaders in jail, and taking their money and their property, and either booting them out of the country or just putting them in jail for the rest of their lives, whichever. But these are enemy combatants right here in the United States.
Well, yes. that was one of the things that I wanted to touch base with you on. I also want our listeners to know that not only do you deal with legislators, but the organization that you founded does go nationwide to local law enforcement and train them in identifying potential dangerous targets. But why are we not doing something? What is your opinion on why we're not doing something? And also, given your history with the FBI, what is the general consensus in us not doing anything?
Well, I can tell you that the consensus in the Bureau for people that understand this is let me put it this way, the people that I trained that began training other people inside of the FBI have all either left, and when I say all of them, I'm talking about like 4 or 5 people in the Bureau that could articulate this the way I do. I mean, the vast majority of the FBI agents don't understand the network and the threat. They understand individual cases. When people say, I'm going to kill that guy, or I'm going to blow up this, or I'm going to go attack that, then they're all over it. But understanding the big picture in the United States and the global Islamic movement, they don't know it. And I can just tell you, I just spoke to somebody in the last week who had been to a recent lengthy FBI training program because his job, he's not in the FBI, and he's somebody that gets this completely. And it was unbelievable. They didn't even talk about this. They talked about, these guys are good at putting out their message, and here's how they communicate the message, and here's what they do and how the message gets out. But they never talked about the message. And the message is Sharia. The imposition of Sharia and adherence to Sharia for both Muslims and non-Muslims. That's what the bad guys say they're doing, why they're doing it, what they're doing. And yet nowhere in the FBI or the Department of Defense are there 3 people sitting down and actually studying Sharia. As a matter of fact, they were ordered by the White House, and then the FBI director said it, the DHS Secretary Napolitano said it, and the Attorney General said it, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs said it. We're shutting this type of training down if it exists in our organizations. So if you just look at that, I mean, the Command and Staff College for mid-level military officers, major, lieutenant colonel, that level, it's a 10-month course, and they don't even mention the word jihad. What? So if you want to talk about a complete and catastrophic failure of our leadership, it's that you're seeing the fruit of a decades-long operation by these jihadis in the United States, not the guys trying to blow people up, but the people wearing suits and influencing our policies, influencing our leaders to the point that we are literally, if you step back and look at what we're doing, it can only be, in my opinion, described as insanity. I mean, the very people that can be identified as members of the Muslim Brotherhood are exclusively the people that the State Department, FBI, CIA, DHS, National Security Staff, and White House use to advise them on these issues.
I was just fixing to ask you how we go from a nation that puts organizations like the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE on terrorist watch list, and a year later they become administrative advisors.
Well, again, when the nature of how they operate is understood, because the majority of what they're doing right now is not, even though we're watching it in Syria and Libya and Africa and in many places of the world where people are getting killed by the tens of thousands, which should be a clue to us that there's a much greater problem than we're giving it credit for. You would think after fighting wars on several fronts for 14 years, we'd be clued in that something major is going on.
Right.
But apparently not. And but the majority of what they're doing here in North America is they're wearing suits, and back to the Clinton administration, they get their foot in the door, which was really already in the door, but they get their foot in the door, especially in the early 90s, and they start in the political, the education realm, the religious community, the media, just like the Soviet Union did. And this is a it's a movement, a capital M movement. You can be likened to an insurgency here. It's political influence operations. It's subversion. It's propaganda. It's recruitment of people. And when you can get somebody who's a mid-level manager at the CIA 15 years ago to befriend you and your colleagues, and you start talking to them, and then 15 years later they become, an SES level, or maybe even the director or assistant director of the Central Intelligence, you've got major influence. And I can just walk you down. I mean, pick a policy, and I can show you the Muslim Brotherhood wrote it. I mean, who wrote the Building Bridges strategy for our domestic counterterrorism programs? The Muslim Public Affairs Council. That's the Muslim Brotherhood. Who conned us into writing constitutions for Iraq and Afghanistan that created Islamic republics under Sharia, because they told us Sharia didn't matter. Now we have everything we fought for in Iraq and Afghanistan, we gave away in 2005. I would argue that's when the war was over. Because we created Islamic republics under Sharia. Because we don't have a clue what we're doing, and the people advising us are our enemies. And we can identify these organizations: Islamic Society of North America, Muslim Public Affairs Council, the Muslim Students Association, the Muslim American Society, all members, Islamic Circle of North America, that is the primary organization driving the interfaith outreach in the United States. You wonder why we've got pastors who are dumber than cinder blocks about Islam, because the guys that are talking to them about it are Hamas, Muslim Brotherhood people.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you've got CARE, Council of American Islamic Relations, which is a Hamas organization whose office is, a block from the Capitol Hill offices in the Capitol, and they're up there all the time instead of, dead or in jail where they should be, because they're Hamas terrorists. Hamas is a terrorist organization. Why are we allowing them to wander around in suits on Capitol Hill?
Right.
I mean, this is insanity. And if you just think back to any period of time where we were just slightly more sane, and ask what would be, I don't care what political party, go back to 1980, Democrat or Republican, go back to 1960, John Kennedy, what would he do? I mean, these guys would be it's outrageous what we're letting them get away with. But we have, I think, catastrophic failure in the leadership of both political parties, and it's been going on for a long time. It didn't start with this administration, but it has become significantly worse in the last 6 years. That's for sure.
Okay. John, I've got a question for you to expound on. You've already said that they're very effective. They've infiltrated basically every level of the government. They're writing policies for us. The people that are in power, that have control throughout the federal government and the military, are they simply useful idiots? Do you think some of them are nefarious, or are they just totally ignorant? I mean, what is it? I don't understand. Why would they let this happen? I mean, are they that clueless? These are people in very high levels of, positions of authority and power.
Right. I don't think I can really explain how bad it is on the inside of the government. Like the vacuum, it's like a black hole of knowledge. I mean, when you go and you meet, for instance, let's say you talk to a unit chief or a section chief or even an assistant director at the FBI, and you talk basic stuff. They are, for the most part, they're not nefarious. They're good people, but they are clueless. Now, I would argue that it's actually criminal that they're clueless, because they swear an oath, and the oath that we take is a legally binding oath.
that comes with the duty to know or do a due diligence effort to know all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Right.
So if you're the unit chief, section chief, assistant director of the FBI in the counterterrorism division, and you don't know the basics of Sharia, and yet 100% of the Muslim jihadis we run into say, when you ask, why'd you do this? Because it's a command from Allah to wage jihad until Sharia is the law of the land and the caliphate is established. 100% of them say that. They write it. They say it in front of the camera. I mean, they've been saying it now for 30 years.
Oh, John, wait a minute.
9/11 very clearly.
John.
So there's some of that. There's this just amazing ignorance. Then there's the willful ignorance. The guys that I know that something's going on, but they're not doing anything about it, those guys should go to jail. And then there are the people who are nefarious, who deny facts, even when they're laid out in front of them, because they don't want you bad-mouthing their friend, the Muslim imam leader, who evidence demonstrates is a terrorist. So those are all, but there's not one answer to that question. You have some people that are just dumb. You have people that they'd rather go along to get along. They're looking at the next promotion. And then you have the people on the inside that are trying to fight the battle. The problem is when they start speaking loudly the truth, they get fired or they get an internal investigation and they're not going to get promoted. I mean, it's amazing what's going on the inside. The good news is, in the near future, at least one of these people that has now just left the government is going to go public and share some of their experiences, and it'll go into a book, and they'll do media things, because this is really, it's bad. Man, you couldn't write this if you said, just create a scenario in your mind of how outrageous it could be. You wouldn't even come up with this, because you just couldn't imagine people would be this unprofessional and unpatriotic, really.
Right.
Well, John,
and one thing I wanted to ask you, John, because you had talked about oath. You've taken an oath both when you were in the military and then in the civil service. When does that oath expire?
It doesn't.
Thank you. Never expires. No expiration date. Wow.
John, I have a question for you, and it's actually a two-part question.
I'm sorry, I only take one-part question.
So there you go, break it up.
That's right. No, it's actually good if you break up a complicated question for me, because I am a Marine, so the simpler you make it, the better for your audience.
Well, then you're in good company, because I have the most fantastic Marine friends on this universe. I mean, veteran Marines. Just lost a very, very dear friend of mine who was a Marine at the Battle of Okinawa this past August, and we just surrounded by wonderful Marines. We love our military. But speaking of which, I mean, and not to parlay this and make this the military's responsibility, because in all honesty, I do not believe it to be 100% the military's responsibility. I believe it to be an American responsibility. I want you to tell us and our listeners, with all that's going on and knowing that this regime plans on bringing in 250,000 quote-unquote Syrian refugees, I call them jihadis, into this country over the next 2 years, given the forces that we have here, given the porous border where people are walking over, and we know that those of Muslim and Islamic descent are coming across the border. What is the threat? That's part one. In your idea, how bad is the threat currently? How bad can it get? And number two, we as the average American citizens, how do we alleviate it when our representation seems to be complicit with it?
Okay, so those are two big questions.
Yes.
The threat. So you tied in asking me what is it, like detail the threat and include the refugee issue and the immigration issue. So let me try to break it down quickly, or as clearly for your audience as I can. We know, the Holy Land Foundation trial
which anybody who kind of follows my work or this, the threat from the Islamic movement in the United States has probably heard of that trial. But that was the largest terrorism financing and Hamas trial in American history, ever successfully prosecuted. It was adjudicated in 2008 in Dallas, Texas, and at the time it was indicted after 9/11, the Holy Land Foundation, or for short, HLF, was the largest Islamic charity in America, and it was a Hamas organization. So just
Correct.
take that as one data point.
Mhm.
Now let me push you back, and we go back to the 1960s. The very first national Islamic organization in America was created by the Muslim Brotherhood, and it was the Muslim Student Association at the University of Illinois in Urbana, Illinois. So in 1963, the first national Islamic organization was created by the Muslim Brotherhood. In 2001, after 9/11, the largest Islamic charity is a Muslim Brotherhood organization because Hamas is an inherent part of the Muslim Brotherhood. It's not like Al-Qaeda, that it's, the leaders of Al-Qaeda, the regional commanders, those are all Muslim brothers, but Al-Qaeda would not call itself a Muslim Brotherhood organization. It grew out of the root of the Muslim Brotherhood that gave it its energy and its clarity, but it's its own entity, whereas Hamas is an inherent part. Hamas is the Palestinian Muslim Brotherhood, so it's its own entity. So we know from that point in the early 60s to 2001 that the Muslim Brotherhood built the significant portion of the Muslim infrastructure in the United States. The organizations, we know, for instance, today there are over 700 Muslim Students Associations on every major college campus and university, just about in all 50 states. We've got over 160 Islamic societies, the Islamic Society of, all of which are subsidiaries of the Islamic Society of North America, which evidence by the U.S. government, the DOJ, the FBI, in the Holy Land Foundation, revealed that ISNA is not only the largest Muslim Brotherhood organization in North America, it is a funding source for Hamas, which is a designated terrorist organization. And the U.S. government identified them as both, which is why ISNA is an unindicted co-conspirator in that case. And yet, the leadership of ISNA, sits on the Homeland Security Advisory Committee with a secret clearance. They brief FBI and CIA. They're currently advising the president and the national security staffs. They're invited to social functions at the White House. So those two, and then by the way, the president made a video for ISNA's anniversary this year, and that video is online on YouTube. All you got to do is, go to YouTube and put ISNA and Obama, and there you can watch him praising an organization that the Department of Justice, the FBI, said is the largest Muslim Brotherhood organization, and it's funding Hamas. So you got to ask, what's that all about? Is he that stupid? So let me get back to the network. I'm just kind of gave you a little tangent there.
Right.
Okay.
So
no problem.
We've got Muslim American societies, care offices, Muslim Public Affairs Council offices across the United States, of which there are several dozen. But you've got over 2,100 Islamic centers in all 50 states, the vast majority of which are owned or led by Muslim Brotherhood leaders. So we know from property records that they own over a third of the property. So right there, you're done with your research. The North American Islamic Trust, the bank for the Brotherhood, owns those properties. And now, because they know we're onto them, they've been changing the title and creating like LLCs or incorporations. But all you got to do is go back to the original owner, and there it is. You know whose property it is. So you start adding these numbers up. And then here's what's interesting. And when I show this to people, especially people in the military, most of them fall out of their seat, is in 1991, the Muslim Brotherhood wrote their strategy memorandum called an explanatory memorandum, which calls for civilization jihad to destroy Western civilization from within.
in order to impose Sharia and establish an Islamic State, kind of like what everyone says. So they published that. Well, that was entered into evidence at the Holy Land Foundation trial, and as was the implementation manual, which implemented their strategy, which was published in 92. And funny thing, when you look at 1983, when ISNA was created in Indiana, we see over 100 organizations created that year, Islamic centers and Islamic societies. And then we see kind of back to a handful being created for the next 10 years. And then when they publish in 92 and 93, the strategy memorandum and the implementation manual, from that point to today, they create about 70 to 120 nonprofits a year.
What?
And you just start doing the math on some of this. And you were talking about a large number of organizations, and then add in the kinds of things that everyone in your audience has already seen with their own eyes. At the biggest airports in the United States, the preponderance of taxi drivers are who?
Yes,
Muslims.
they're Islamic.
Right,
Islamic,
right.
yeah.
Now, why would that be? Is that just a coincidence? Why is it that now many of the 7-Elevens and Quick Marts that used to be owned by a variety of people, including like 7-Elevens, there was a pretty good, that was where Indians, people from India would come, and that was a business that they liked because it was a small business, and they would run them, and it was profitable for them. Well, many of those have been bought up by Muslims. In many cases, Pakistanis, but a mix. Why is that? Why is it that we're seeing this? Why is it that in the biggest cities in America, let's just say the top 20 cities, if you take the top 5 hotels, in the majority of cases, the manager or assistant manager is a Muslim.
Yes.
Now, what are the statistics of these things we're talking about? They're not realistically possible unless this is intentional. And why would it be intentional? Why? Just from a military standpoint, think about infrastructure and logistics. And if you really mean what you say, that you're really going to go to war to overthrow the government and impose Sharia, and in your own documents, you say that your Islamic centers, the Muslim Brotherhood does, are the places from which you're going to launch jihad, well, then it would make sense that you would build 21 or 2,200 of them in the United States. And it would make sense that you would have access in all of our intelligence organizations. So you could not only advise us, but you actually have people employed that have access to our data systems. And if you're assistant manager in a hotel, then when law enforcement or political organizations come and host events, you've got an ear to the ground. You're collecting intelligence. I mean, this is not rocket science. This is exactly how we would do it.
It's smart strategy. Exactly.
This is like right out of a military manual.
Right.
And a political warfare manual. But we don't, if you say that, they're like, oh my God, are you saying because an assistant manager at the Marriott in Las Vegas is a Muslim, that he's somehow involved in well...
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
If you look at all of this,
it's possible.
From the perspective of actually taking them at their word, which is the same thing to do, when they say we are waging jihad to impose Sharia and establish a caliphate. It's what Al-Qaeda says. It's what ISIS says. It's what Abu Sayyaf and Boko Haram say. It's what Hezbollah and Hamas say. It's what the Muslim Brotherhood, Tablighi Jamaat, and Jamaati Islami say. And by the way, it's what the leaders of Islamic nations have put in official documents. So this is their goal, to impose Sharia on the world. Now, how they do it, they will disagree. And when they disagree, you'll see them fighting each other. But don't ever get confused that they're fighting each other because they're on our side. That would be a mistake, because they are not.
Yeah, the enemy of...
I mean, how many more tens of thousands of people need to be killed before you realize maybe there is actually something to this?
So the question is, now, first of all, I'm going to say, when it comes to Islamics, I tried to remind people there's no such thing as a moderate Islamic. The moderate Islamic is the one that will sit back and watch you die or deliver you up. Just case in point, we discussed a case not too long ago of a situation where a family had known its moderate Muslim neighbor, broke bread with them, assisted each other in home repair, etc. And what do? that moderate Muslim paid them back by assassinating their children. Okay, we know this situation exists. Our listeners understand that there really is no such thing as a moderate Muslim. You are being utilized. We understand the practice of taqiyya. We also understand that our government has been infiltrated, and we understand that given that scenario, that so many are complicit in this behavior. So as an American individual, how do we go about alleviating the threat?
Well, that's a big question. That's the biggest question you've asked. And let me just say something to clarify, because I think it's important. Islam is what Islam is, and Islam is what Islam says it is. Islam defines itself as a complete way of life governed by Islamic law. So it defines itself completely as a total system, cultural, social, military, political, and religious, all governed by Sharia law. And 100% of Sharia law mandates jihad until the world is under Sharia law. That there's no such thing as a version of Islam that's not that.
And so when people say that's not true, I have a friend and he fought, and I'm like, well, that's nice. And your friend may be sincere. The problem is, that's not what I'm talking about. Your friend saying, I don't support Sharia, doesn't constitute a different version of Islam. It constitutes an individual who's not subscribing to the very thing he says he subscribes to. And that's fine. It's not for me to judge. I'm a national security consultant, not a personal welfare counselor. And if somebody wants to call themselves a Muslim, but believe that Jesus is a savior, they can do that. It's a free world. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
However, that doesn't constitute a different version of Islam. And that's what Islam is. Now, there are people who identify themselves as Muslims that don't support Sharia. And that's fine, too. That's not my business either. But when you just look at what Islam is and what Islam teaches, you can pretty much simplify it by saying Al-Qaeda has never misquoted Islamic law. And when you understand that, you understand, like, whoa, like they are, the reality is they get it. And when they don't get it and they make mistakes, the point of the discussion among the Islamic groups is always Sharia. That's it. It's that you didn't adhere to Sharia here. That's a problem. And then they'll even kill each other over that because it's that important, because Sharia matters. It's the only thing they say they're fighting for. It's their blueprint for fighting. That has to be understood. If we don't understand it, you want to know why they do this and why they didn't do this? It's because Sharia. Why are these guys fighting these guys and they're both Muslims? Now, do they have disputes over power and money and stuff? Sure. But the majority of it is you can look to Sharia for your answer. And the problem is most people, even people that are reading and studying this, you've got to go deep into this because it answers all these questions. So that, I felt, needed to be said. What's the solution? I believe that this is an insurgency in the United States. They have so many organizations working at the local level with churches, with local school districts, with local elected officials, state elected officials, U.S. members of Congress, national media, at the university, collegiate level. We are penetrated in a way that makes the Soviets, would make them blush, because these guys have really taken it to a new level. So how do you undo that? The only way to undo this, and by the way, the definition of a counter-insurgency is the focus is at the local level, and the tip of the spear becomes the local cop. My experience from going around the country, I think the best place to start is with the sheriffs and pastors. Sheriffs, because they are the most powerful law enforcement officer in the country, and pastors, because if we could even just get 10% of the pastors in America to pull their heads out of their backsides and actually speak truth about the threat of Islam, and not that Islam is also an Abrahamic faith, which is not true. I just wrote an article on it this week, published it Tuesday, so you can read about that at Understanding the Threat. But and that was kind of, I wrote that because Jeremiah Wright said over the weekend that Jesus was a Palestinian.
I
so
know.
I thought that was a beautiful opportunity to shed some light on the truth. Okay, that notwithstanding, how do we do it? It's got to be at the local level. Local cops have got to be trained. I'm finding that by getting local district attorneys, local town attorneys, and local cops and people who are state cops trained in this, to understand this, and then teaching them, once you know this, how does this affect interviews, interrogation, traffic stops, warrants, when you're going in for a drug warrant or a homicide or a domestic, how does it affect this? How is your organization hiring people? How do you discern all of this? These are things that once you understand this, I liken it to walking into a 3D movie with no glasses on and watching for 20 minutes. And your eyes are starting to swirl, and then you put the glasses on, you're like, now I get it. And that's what this is, once you know this stuff. But local police are not going to go out on their own unless they believe they've got the support of the citizens and local elected officials. If the sheriffs take the lead on this, and I've worked with a number of sheriffs around the country and have trained thousands of police officers now, I think if you get the sheriffs on board, then you can go to the citizens and the sheriffs. It's important that you get local elected officials and local leaders, like pastors, like business leaders, like VFW presidents and civic leaders. They need to know this. But that's the way you do it. And so in a particular state, you've got to map out the state to see where and most people that live in the state already know where the concentration of jihadis are if they have that issue in their state. And so far what I've seen is all 50 states have that issue, but some are much worse than others. Then you start county by county getting those people, cops, citizens, elected officials at the local level, educated on this. And there's state legislation. The Center for Security Policy has a whole portfolio of state legislation that can push back some of the things that these guys are doing. But it's at the local level. Local cops are bumping into this every day. And so you start with counties that are secure, that are solid. You get them educated, and you start building county by county in each state, people who understand this threat and are willing to go at it. And then once you've got police in several counties in your state that understand this, and they can start cleaning house, because now they've got allies. And when I say clean house, I mean you make the jihadis unwelcome in your county and in your state. And that's going to require state legislators, governors, and attorney generals who have spines, who are going to provide top cover for people in this. This is a fight. This is not. There's no easy solution here. And I think even by doing this, at some point, it's going to turn ugly. But we're going to have to weather some storms, because as soon as you really start doing this, it's going to create riots. And they're already protesting that just anything. They're the most offended group of people I've ever seen. They get offended at the drop of a hat.
Well, we have an environment where we promote the exploitation of offense. I mean, we have built that environment. What I'm gonna mention a couple of things to you. I live in the state of Georgia. I make no secret about that to any of our listeners. I live in the state of Georgia. We have jihadi camps here, absolutely no doubt. We have had Constitutional Sheriff Tom Laurie out of New York State, Upper New York. They have a jihadi camp nearby his location. How would I be taken seriously in going to the communities and contacting the sheriffs and the businesses, etc., and be taken with any legitimacy in approaching those businesses? That's my first question. And number two, I want to point to you that when we had Constitutional Sheriff Tom Laurie from New York visit with us here on our program, one of the things that he identified is that in making an attempt to deal with the jihadi camp close to him, he was told by the federal government, stand down. They have an ongoing investigation, and that it was that's a rippled response we're hearing across the country.
Yeah, so you've asked a couple of kind of, again, deep questions. The first one is, I would say you don't need to be the one to approach the sheriff. Get citizens together and get them organized. You maybe already have, whether there's there are different groups, whether it's a Tea Party or an Act for America or somebody that's educated on this. And there are plenty of these groups that are not educated on this. They might be patriots, but they're not clued into this threat. You got to get them educated, and you got to build that at the ground level. There's got to be an organic build from the bottom up. And then in your group, there are people that know sheriff's deputies. Then figure out, okay, we got these three guys are good guys. I know their parents. I know their brothers. Let's get them educated, and you spend some time educating them. And that's why that's why I do what I do. And whether you get them, a copy of the book, just say, read it, and here's some resources or whatever you do. You get them to start seeing this, and then they go to their training officer. They go to their deputy chief or their chief deputy, and they say, I think we should look at this training. This is not at all what we thought it was. That's how it works. You don't go in there and talk to the sheriff because he won't probably give you the time of day. But you got people around you, just like maybe you don't go in and see the Archbishop of Atlanta. Somebody does. Somebody knows somebody that works in that office.
True.
You might not be the person to go in for the state of Georgia to speak to the director of the VFW or the American Legion, which is bigger. But somebody is in the American Legion, and somebody can start at their own American Legion, say, we have a problem, and it's a lot different than we thought. That's how this is going to get done. And you let those people take it up their chain, not you or not other people that aren't part of that. So, and you got to build it organically that way.
Okay, and then I've got another tough question for you.
Oh,
and I'm sorry, I'm throwing these at you, but our listeners want to know these things. Given the environment that we live in that seems so supportive of what you have described has been an ongoing implementation of jihad on American soil since 1960, what do you think of the regime's targeting of right-wing extremists and the Department of Justice's new Department of Domestic Extremism Division?
Well, that is just another movement away from actually doing a professional job, which is identifying the real threat, which are Islamic jihadis. And this nonsense, by the way, the countering violent extremism nonsense came from the UK. The FBI in the mid-2000s, kind of 06 time frame, started going over to the UK and talking to them about their countering violent extremism stuff, which is essentially when you say we're going to counter violent extremists, it means you're not actually countering jihadis, which is exactly the point. Guess who created the countering violent extremism topic?
The Muslim Brotherhood.
The UK. It was the Muslim Brotherhood in the UK.
Oh my!
That's who created it, and so the government in Britain picks it up. That's the Muslim Council of Britain and the Muslim Association of Britain came up with that beauty, and that's the Muslim Brotherhood. And so they bring that nonsense over here to the U.S., and we're eating it up. And that was under the Bush administration, by the way, just so we're clear.
Right.
So there's plenty of blame to go around.
Right. Yeah, that's not a surprise to us or any of our listeners. I'm sure we've talked about how everything right after 9/11, 2001, however, it started ramping up. I mean, if you go back and look at facts and figures of how many more Muslims started coming into the country when you think we would have put a halt to it, or at least greatly slow it down, it actually started increasing right around that time.
Right.
So,
well, what you'll find is that we are conservative. We're constitutionally based. We believe in our first 10 Bill of Rights amendments with complete devotion. A lot of our listeners are oath keepers, veterans, military-minded, patriot-minded individuals that are looking for a way to assist in salvaging our republic. And I think what you're clarifying for most of our listeners is most of them thought the war was coming. Most of them did not realize the war has been being waged on our soil for over 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's it. You just clarified it. We're already here.
John, one of the things you said is you had talked about a good thing to do would be to involve clergy, pastors, and that sort of thing. However, I'm concerned because we've got this, and it's been around for a while, and I'm not going to mention any names, but some well-known names, people that actually have the ear of the President of the United States, and this thing known as Chrislam, where it's Christianity, a bastardized blend of Christianity and Islam together. And like I said, some very influential and big names, considered to be Christians or within the religious field and stuff like that. And then the other thing, and I don't know if I'm asking questions or just kind of mentioning it, is that I believe that PC to me seems like it's going to be the cyanide pill that takes out this country, because like V had mentioned, and you've been talking about kind of interwoven through everything you've said, is Islam, as soon as somebody goes against them, for you, for example, or a lot of other well-known people that are going after them and telling the truth, they immediately play the victim card. They immediately act like they're attacked. And of course, they throw out the card, the racism card, even though Muslim and Islam is not a race. It's not truly racism. And they seem to be protected at every turn. I mean, how do we combat that effectively?
Well, I think that you simply have to begin with speaking the truth, being unafraid to speak the truth, do it unemotionally. I mean, you're going to have some passion with it. You should do it with passion. But, a lot of people I meet out on the road around the country, they're just so angry.
Yeah.
And when you get in front of a group of people, and especially if the media's got you, they'll use that against you. And so you just got to lay it out. And I think you got to have a sense of humor. I mean, I've had these arguments where people just start, you're a racist, you're an Islamophobe, and they're screaming and they're falling in the house. I mean, if you can sit there and smile and begin to laugh and say, what are you talking about? I just laid out an entire court case that this is the network, this is what they're doing. This is the fact. So you're saying Islam doesn't teach this. Is that what you're saying? Of course I'm saying that. Okay. Where are they teaching it? Can you name me one book of Islamic law or one Islamic center on the planet that teaches the version of Islam you're talking about? That loves everyone and hugs them. Where is that?
Mm-hmm.
And you just wait. You don't say, you're lying, you just wait. Where is that being taught? And then they're like, they'll say everything. No, just name me one authoritative scholar in Islam that says and has published that jihad is not an obligation until the entire world is under Islamic rule. Who's that guy? And what's the title of the book? I'm not talking about a book you get at Barnes & Noble, written by some, non-Muslim apologist or some Muslim for a non-Muslim audience. You got to understand, it's a capital crime in Islam. It is actually an act of apostasy for a Muslim to intentionally teach another Muslim something that is false about Islam. So if you go into an Islamic bookstore and buy those books of Islamic law, and I always recommend people pay cash, and you go home and you read it, it's exactly what Al-Qaeda says. And it doesn't matter which one you get. It's always going to be, that's what it's going to say because that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they start making these nonsense claims, you just got to say, okay. Instead of saying, no, you're wrong, just say, okay, where are they teaching that? What you just said. Love thy neighbor. Where's that being taught? What mosque? Can you name a mosque?
Do you even know what they're teaching in the mosque? How many books, how many school textbooks from American Islamic centers have you read? And their answer is going to be zero. And you're like, well, you can read reports. I mean, the former director of the CIA, Jim Woolsey, did a report on what's inside of our mosques, and especially the Saudi-funded mosques across the country, which is a preponderance of them as well. And I mean, it's what it sounds like what Al Qaeda's saying, because it is.
Yeah.
Well, it's exactly.
Good point.
It is exactly. I mean, they don't make any bones about it. People in the United States of America really have this mindset of a utopia. And utopia does not exist. Not in any religion does utopia exist. I mean, you want utopia, die. I mean, you really do have to die first. No two individuals are going to get along all the time, period. There is going to be conflict. When we had 4, 25% killed one, okay? So, I mean, it's kind of real clearly defined there. But you have this mindset in the United States that we can all have that Rodney King moment of we can all get along. They do not acknowledge these people want to kill you.
Well, yeah, and they're doing it on several continents right now, killing people by the thousands. So, I just think you need to, and I think you just hit on something, is that I think there's a good portion in the West of our population. When I say good portion, I don't know, is it 30%, is it 40%, 25%? But I think it's a big chunk that lives in fantasy land. We live in a land of, unicorns and thin clouds, and so we check out, we play video games 5 hours a day, or, surf the internet for stuff we shouldn't be looking at, or just check out, go and stare at the TV for 5 hours, whatever it is, people are just checking out, and that's an easy fix. Yeah, you just check out, get disengaged from your family and community, and then of course you got no problems, but the problems are coming to your door. Pretending that it's not there isn't a strategy for living, and it's not a strategy for victory. And, I live in reality. I don't know, why. I can look at the way I grew up. I can look at the things I've experienced, and I've had the opportunity. I've been blessed by having some pretty tremendous experiences in the Marine Corps and in the FBI, and even since then. And I've gotten a real good dose of what reality looks like, and that tends to, help you stay in reality. And, a lot of people just don't want to be in reality. I think it's, when we look at these people who would politically identify themselves as on the left, many of them that I've talked to, I think are disconnected from reality. They don't, all they want is what feels good for them. And when you explain, well, that's nice, but if we do what you're saying, we go broke and then we all starve. And would that make you feel good? You got to kind of get reality back into their noggin there. So I think that's a big part of the reality. And by the way, that was one of the purposeful outcomes of the Soviets and the progressives' attack on our system, and continued attack on our system, is the destruction of reason. We have the ability to think and talk reasonably is gone, or nearly gone, in many spheres of our community. And I think that's what has laid the foundation for what we're experiencing. Because if you can destroy reason and remove the principles of the founding, then what do you have left? Because to the founders, reason and natural law and the Bible were the founding ideologies upon which the government was born. God gave us our rights, therefore no man, no government can take them. Therefore we surrender our right to self-government to create a government whose sole purpose is to secure the liberties that God gave us. And out of that government, we codify the rule of law, which already existed because God gave it to us according to our founders, right? And then so we build a government, and out of the government comes the rule of law, and out of the rule of law comes liberty for the society, and out of liberty comes prosperity. And
but
so if you pull that founding principle of God and the Ten Commandments, which is the fulcrum for our legal system, then all of this collapses. And so what do we do if you don't have, because the founders didn't intend for the laws to keep people at bay. That's why they wanted the Bible, and they did have the Bible until the 1960s, taught in public school. So everyone had that moral framework of love God, love your neighbor, do unto others. And when everybody gets that, not everybody's going to live it, but people will live closer to that if they hear it than if they don't, because there aren't enough policemen in the world to go around enforcing the law. Police were meant to kind of keep the society at bay from going too far one direction. But when you just pull that piece out, well, that's why we've over-legislated for the last 4 decades. Because if there's not a moral compass, then you have to over-legislate, and you have to tell people what to do more and more. And naturally then, government gets more and more authority that it doesn't have the right to have. It's acting unconstitutionally. And then when it creates laws that counter the moral compass that is the foundational footing for the whole country and our whole legal system, when you remove that, then you end up creating laws that are not actually law.
But that is what we've been seeing. But is that not what we've been seeing? Is the indoctrination of our children and the move away not only from our religious beliefs?
But for decades, American parents have been tolerating it. Nobody wants to go to school and be labeled as the jerk. Well, so your kid's just another. He doesn't get it.
And then is that not being
an elementary school or a junior high school, and you ask them, where do your rights come from? You'll get somewhere in most places, you're going to get somewhere close to 0% will know the answer to that. That's a problem, because once you get to that point, you're several steps towards real tyranny in your system.
Well, isn't that being reinforced when you have the resident standing up there and saying, well, Islam was part of the foundation of this country? That's funny to me, because when I look at the Constitution, I see Al-Muhammad nowhere on it.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Islam was a part of our founding. The first war we fought after the revolution
was
against the Muslims.
That's correct.
The reason Thomas Jefferson had a Quran is because he was dealing with the Muslims when he was an ambassador, and John Adams was ambassador of England. And the Muslim leaders said, yeah, we're doing what we're doing because the Quran commands us to. So I guess in that part, the idea of a letter of marque, which is codified in our founding documents, the letter of marque, which gives citizens authority from the government to operate and combat against, for instance, Muslim pirates. It has been a part of our founding, just not quite the way the people saying these things mean them to be.
Right. And you had spoken about being a Marine yourself. I believe the Marines, part of the term leatherneck came from the having those leather uppers, the neck part, so they could block sword thrusts.
That's correct.
That's right.
To the shores of Tripoli, I believe that had something to do with that.
Yeah. It's not, the Barbary
That's exactly
Coast.
where that came from.
Right.
I have one more question. We are quickly running out of time here, and but there is one more thing that I want to get to with you. There are people such as yourself, such as us here on this show, such as Pamela Geller, and quite a few of the other friends of the show, people that we respect and admire for their courage, of their convictions, that are speaking out desperately to people to inform them of what is occurring in this nation. So many of them have been labeled extremist by the left. And so many of our listeners and our followers and the people that are actually interested in what we're doing are so concerned that inevitably law enforcement will come for them with all of the new right-wing extremist banter, that they feel like they're being silenced or stifled. Now, there are those of us who don't really care if they come for us. Give me 3 hots and a cot and I'll be fine. But what do you say to them? Because I've been saying the time for civility and silence is over.
Well, yeah, I think the time for speaking truth, being firm, and defending your family and your community is definitely there. And I think people need to start going and getting in the face of their elected officials. But it's got to be done. You know, I always believe that the first time round, you give them the opportunity to make the right decision. And then if they kind of ignore you or flip you off, well, then you go in and you take a different tact. But just there are so many examples. You know, when up north of Boston, there was a community that was going to welcome one of the Guantanamo Bay, detainees, and the local elected officials. I'm trying to remember I think they were aldermen was the term that this, locale used. But anyway, the aldermen voted on it without getting really public opinion. And, the next meeting they had like 80 citizens. I don't even know if it was 80 citizens. So not many. But they essentially said, we're going to string you up. What the heck are you doing? And if we would do that about these other issues, I think you'd see. But people are afraid, oh, look at that guy. He's a nut. Look at him. He's
but then you
standing
have
up for something.
But
God,
then
who cares what somebody says about it? If you're right, you got to be right, and you better be right. And start out, saying, look, we just like the founders, we have an obligation to use all legal means and go through them. But once we've exhausted all those means, well,
all bets are off.
We're the government, and we're responsible. If we don't fix this, it's on us. We can't blame the president or the Congress. We elected these people. We got to hold them accountable, and we're not.
Well, I would agree with that. And I agree going to your governments. What I have found when discussing things with local government is prime example, Department of Justice, Loretta. I call her lynch mob. You'll have to excuse that if you don't agree. I'm not going to apologize for it. But Loretta lynch mob has now pushed forward with a discrimination lawsuit against a county for failing to rezone property to allow for a mosque. People are being threatened, cities are being threatened for racism and discrimination lawsuits for not going along to get along with the new Islamic push. What say you?
Right, but that's just a symptom of the bigger problem, which is abuse of power by the government. And so what you need governors and county council members and mayors who have courage and say, well, we're not doing it. We don't care what you say. Go ahead and sue us. Let's go into court. Sue us. But there are a lot of ways, but I don't see a way that this doesn't become confrontational with the federal government from a state's perspective. Like has been going on, states suing the federal government because they're doing things that they don't have constitutional authority to do.
Correct.
The federal government cannot force a locale to adhere to a particular zoning code. I mean, where is that authority? But where,
Right. Mm-hmm. And what you've been preaching and saying and screaming from the rooftops, V, state rights, it has to start at the state level.
I do.
Local and state level, not the feds. And starve the beast, starve the feds, make them get the money from the states. That's what my co-host has been preaching for months and months and months. I mean, that's where it all happens. Don't try to reform the feds. That's not likely to happen very quickly. Start with our local people.
That's right. the way it's gotta be.
Right.
Well, that is, that's the attempts that we make. That's what I truly believe. I think states and your local town, city, county should get on board with the states, start applying pressure. And remember, folks, we have the 10th Amendment. The federal government only has that power which a state allows them to have. We've got to start enforcing that. We've got to reel this in. This is already a boots on the ground fight, and people, most of your neighbors have no idea. Am I missing something here, John?
Nope, I think you got it. You're on the mark.
We're coming to the end of our show, and the funny thing is you only committed 30 minutes to me, and I am just so thrilled.
Yeah, so I had to do some creative, activities while I've been on the phone to get myself prepared for my next appointment. So I was able to get all my stuff in my car out to the car while we were doing this, so I figured I'd keep giving you as much time as long as I could keep moving in the direction I needed to go.
We greatly appreciate that. I can't tell you how much. And I believe from all the word we're receiving, feedback we're receiving from folks that are listening, it's things that we all think about and we talk about constantly, but to hear somebody that's been inside the system at the level you have been, inside the we call it the Department of Injustice.
No, he's been at the FBI, counterterrorism. He was, yeah. It's good to hear, I guess, from someone, like I said, that's been on the inside like yourself, to reiterate our worst fears in some respects. And yeah, it's happening every day. I think it was very eye-opening because I will be honest with you. You provided information this evening that I did not know. I knew what was here. I knew how bad this could get. I did not realize that it had begun its implementation as long ago as it had to have the realization. I mean, that's just like communism in our government. People don't realize that this has been going on for over 100 years. They've been moving in this direction. To realize tonight that we have been for 50 years moving into a caliphate by jihadis on American soil. It was an eye-opener for me, and I very much appreciate your time, your attention.
Oh, yes.
I hope that you will come visit us again. I'm ordering your book as soon as the show is over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me. I definitely, one of the things I would encourage your listeners as well, that a lot of people have given me very positive feedback on, is I have a DVD that's at the website that's about an hour and a half presentation of walking through the facts of the network here.
Mm-hmm.
And what a lot of people have done is they'll get a group together of whatever number, whether it's 20 or 100, and they'll do a showing of the video, and then they'll have me, and you can sign up for this on the website. You can have me Skype in, and I'll spend 2 to 3 hours with you and answer questions. And so then they already have the ground. I don't have to kind of go over it, and then we can kind of push forward from there. Give them an update, where we are, what's going. People can ask questions about, whatever, Syria or Israel or, the Russia-China threat, the Iran deal, all that stuff, and we can just talk about it. So that's another thing that people may want to do, and that's easy.
Okay.
So just there are things to do, but I certainly believe getting. I wrote the book. It's less than 100 pages, and people that have read it continually tell me it really it simplifies what they believe is a complicated, threat, but it makes it so they can understand it and share it with others.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're most definitely, guys, for all of our listening audience out there, not only for yourselves, but for your friends, family, associates, co-workers, people you know on the street. Maybe you'd like to forward a copy to your local sheriff's department or your local VFW, American Legion, what have you. Maybe you have a contact that can make that presentation for you. We're going to post the website, the book, the DVD, all of that will be on our website, thewtfradioshow.com. We will be tweeting it out at the WTF Radio, and we will be putting it on our Facebook page at WTF, the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Show, so that you have accessibility to that information. By all means, guys, please get knowledgeable. We have found out this evening how far behind the gun we are.
Yes.
In all honesty, that's what has been exposed here this evening. John Guandolo, I cannot thank you enough for joining us tonight. It has been an absolute pleasure, very enlightening, and I'd already invite you to return and spend an evening with us again sometime in the very near future.
Well, I love it, and thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to talking to you next time.
You're welcome. Our pleasure, sir. Thanks for everything, and take care.
Thank you. You too. God bless you. Bye-bye.
You as well. And ladies and gentlemen, that was a former FBI agent, John Guandolo. He is with the Counterterrorism Task Force. Actually, he was one of the individuals that helped draft the whole counterterrorism program at the FBI, an author, and just full of invaluable information.
Isn't that something?
Guys, I'm going to remind you, because I know many of you will want to know this. Following our show, you will find a link to the playback of this show on our Facebook page, on our Twitter feed at the WTF Radio, on Facebook, WTF the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Show. That will be available there. In addition, you can go to Spreaker.com or YouTube and find this particular show. It is dated for today, 10/15/2015, with guest John Guandolo. Please share that information. This is probably one of those shows that it is vital to get this information out, because I will be honest with you, I had no idea how much progress had been made until tonight against us.
Well said. And he laid it out, I'll tell you what, very factually, and that it's at every level of the government. We have been infiltrated, and I think the thing I found most interesting is the fact that they start all these organizations and they're all tax exempt, and yet you've got the IRS going after the Tea Party groups and the right-leaning groups, the conservative groups, and all these Muslim groups get to be tax exempt. So even further, using our money against us. Wow. I mean, it's just I don't know. It's very troubling. Very, very troubling.
Well, like I said, it is probably, it has gone on longer, and it has delved deeper, and it has been, it is more entwined than I had realized, and this particular show has been a true awakening for me. When he said that he sat down with military members and he has shown them and documented basically as an evidentiary situation, as if he were going in court, and shown them the progression and where we are at the threat level, and they have been astounded that we have been infiltrated on our own soil and nobody realizes it. I totally get what he's saying.
Right. Didn't he say there's a training course for the military that's what? Did he say 10 months long, and yet they're not allowed to mention jihadis and radical Muslim, radical Islam?
And the FBI, absolutely.
I mean, really? What the F?
Well, you stop and think about this. Remember, the big stink about 5 years ago was to remove the word Islamic from all of training material.
Right.
I mean,
believe they were successful, to be honest with you.
That was a big move. Absolutely. It was removed from all training material.
Right.
Anyway, guys, we are at the end of our show. Of course, we're the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Show. We are here on Patriot Network News, PNNTalkRadio.com. You can find us on patriotsride.org, iTunes, TuneIn.com, Spreaker.com. You can contact us on our Facebook page. You can contact us on Twitter. You're welcome to call us Monday through Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. When we're live, our phone lines are open at 313-462-0068. You can catch our recast or download and catch us on demand at either Spreaker.com or YouTube. Again, a link for this particular show, as well as some other links in reference to our guest, will be available on our Facebook page within 30 minutes of the close of this show tonight. Folks, I have been thrilled this evening with our guest and the information that we've been able to put out. I hope you guys enjoyed it too, Senor.
Folks, our friend Imad Moussa, Syrian